So we have another fabulous, I know this will be a fabulous story, an unstoppable story. This is Linda Fostek. And I always love, uh, preluding a story by saying that for me, this is such a joy with choosing vibrancy. I think things don't always go our way, and it's not always easy to choose vibrancy. Sometimes we want to go sit in a corner or put the bed covers over our head, and we often get that way. And so I think when we hear someone else's story where they have chosen vibrancy, where they've chosen to be resilient and kept on going, that it gives us courage and insight, and we relate and we think, okay, if she can do it, I can do it. And I think that's a way that we can all lift each other up. So it's my pleasure to find and bring new yummy stories to you every week. So Linda is the author of 9 books. I'm impressed with that, and seems to be an expert. We're really meeting for the first time and really having a chat just now. But Linda calls herself a crisis planner, and you're going to want to check out some of her books. She's got a book that's called And Now What? And so for those of us that, run on the, by the seat of our pants kind of a thing, it's good to have some things in place because you never know when something comes up. So I'm going to let you take it from here, Linda, and share one of your fabulous stories about how you've been unstoppable.
Well, I think as a woman, every one of us is unstoppable in our own ways. We get dealt cards all the time that are unexpected, and we deal with them.
We're the ones that have to deal with it.
Yeah, you're the
as
ones
women,
that,
right?
As women, you raise children, you get divorced, you lose jobs, you get new jobs, you have to start at the beginning, you start at the bottom again, and you crawl your way up, and then something happens, you get moved because, if somebody gets a better job. So we need to be unstoppable and resilient.
Yeah.
And how can we best do that? And, in my own life, I know I've had to deal with some pretty scary stuff at times. I mean, my husband was disabled for almost 20 years. His last 3 years, he was on dialysis, and we were doing home hemodialysis with me as his medical assistant with all the machinery and everything else. If anyone would have told me I was going to be doing that, it was never in my purview, believe me.
You do what you have to do.
What I always found that gave me the ability to be unstoppable was a positive outlook. That quality of time that we had to spend with each other 5 days a week, where we spent hours with him hooked up to that machine. It was quality time that we had together that we wouldn't have had if we weren't doing that together.
Right.
If he was going off to a dialysis center, I wouldn't have been there with him. So we made that time really count. And when I lost him almost 4 years ago, before he passed, he says to me, "You are going to do great things." So I have to fulfill his vision of where I am going. I was a crisis planner before his passing, and having all of those things in place before the event happened. I mean, he had every detail of his funeral planned. I didn't have to do a thing. It was a true celebration of his life. And when he did pass, we were both freed. He was freed from his suffering. Yeah. I was freed to go on and do whatever it is I was supposed to do. And since that time, I've had the most amazing opportunities have come my way. I mean, I was invited to speak at a women's conference a year ago in January, before the whole pandemic thing happened, in Madurai, India. I mean, me, invited to speak on a stage in Madurai in front of 2,000 women. I mean, it was like, how did that happen? It's by being open, saying yes, and then figuring things out because you don't know. But just recently, I mean, 2 weeks ago, I mean, I'm going along merrily with my life and very busy and doing all the things I'm doing. And I end up in the emergency room. I mean, like I'm doing my radio show, and during the show, I'm like, God, I've got this terrible pain, and it's getting worse and worse. And I'm interviewing a doctor while I'm doing the show, which is really hysterical funny. And I'm like, okay, I finished the show, and I'm like doubled over in pain, and this is not going away.
Mm-hmm.
And I ultimately ended up in the emergency room, and I ended up with emergency surgery. But knowing what to do took all the worry about what was going to happen when I was in the hospital, who was going to take care of my dogs, who was watching my house, who has my advance directives. All of those things were already in place so that I could be focused completely
Mm-hmm.
on healing myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the quintessential definition of an unstoppable woman is like, I'm back. I had surgery just, I went into the hospital 2 weeks ago, and now I'm
Yeah.
here. I'm doing
Yeah.
this. It's like,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Life carried on because of the things that you had in place. So yeah, I think that's super important, because I think sometimes people are so stressed out about worrying about, what's going to happen, because everything you're in crisis, that becomes the biggest thing.
And we tend to worry about two things. We worry about things we can control, and we worry about things we can't.
Yeah.
And my husband was an expert worrier. He worried enough for both of us. I tend not to worry, because the things you can't control them. So why waste the energy worrying about it?
Exactly.
Like what's going on in the world today with the pandemic and everything else, I don't have any control over that. What I do have control over is how can I be part of the solution instead of part of the problem?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And as part of the solution, I became part of what is called CERT, which is the Community Emergency Response Team. And every county throughout the country has a CERT organization. It was set up after Katrina as a way to train civilians to be prepared to assist in a disaster. Well, we've been activated since this pandemic. And, and I made a commitment early on in the pandemic. Once a week, I was assisting distributing PPE. Since January, we've been participating in the distribution of the vaccine. So once a week, I go and spend 5 or 6 hours helping with the vaccine distribution locally. But it's so empowering when you can be part of that solution.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
for me, that is part of who I am as well, because it's giving back to the community. It's helping others have the peace of mind so that they too can get off the worry-go-round. And that is kind of my tagline. Get off the
worry-go-round. I like that.
So that's just one way. Now, if it is something you can control, then do something about it.
Yeah.
Instead of worrying, oh, my kid's away at college, and what if something happens to them and they have an accident? Well, there are certain legal documents you need to have in place for your child.
Yeah.
Or if they do have an accident and they don't have a living will and a healthcare proxy and a power of attorney in place, and you call the hospital and say, I'm so-and-so's mother, and, and they're unconscious and I need to, you have no legal right to make any medical decisions without those documents.
Wow.
A lot of people are not aware of that.
I wasn't aware of that. Yeah. And I have adult children. That's really good to think about.
So there's things that you can have in place that will make things easier on yourself. And that's where, the books that I've written are all about the tools and resources you want to have in place before a disaster happens, so that you and your loved ones can access it when they need it.
Yeah.
Instead of sending them on a scavenger hunt without a list.
Right.
You're going to have everything in one place. They're going to know exactly what to do. And isn't that the ultimate gift of love for those that you care about most?
Yeah. Wow, Linda, you got me thinking. I was like, yeah, no, I gotta get on it. I gotta talk to my girls and be better prepared. Thank you so much for sharing.